several sections today, couple of short sections. Okay, so let me run through this to begin with. So what you're given on this is you're given a line, y equals 2x, and then you're given a point, and you're going to find an equation that's parallel to that line that goes through that point. Okay, so here's the first thing that I would like you to do is let's graph this. We don't need the calculator or anything. So that is y equals mx plus b. So it's got a y-intercept of 0. Okay, it's got a slope of 2 over 1. So if it's got a slope 2, what do? You go up 2, right 1, over and over again. So from that point, go up 2, right 1. And then that will be the graph of your original line. Okay, like that. Okay, and I'm going to label that y equals 2x. So we worked on basically how to graph a linear function by hand last time. Okay. Now plot your point 4, 4. So you just go over 4, up 4 like that. And what we're going to do is make a line that goes parallel to that goes through that point. All right. So what I'm going to do on this one is we're going to use the point slope formula. Okay. So in general, if you want to find an equation of a line, the point slope formula will get you there. Okay. That's one way to do that. So what you're doing is you have a point 4, 4. The x value is 4, so that plugs in like that. You have a y value also of 4, so that plugs in like that. Okay? And what do we know about the slopes of two parallel lines? What have we learned? They're the same, right? Okay. So the slope of this line is 2. That means the parallel line will also have a slope of 2. Okay, now if you work that out, you'll get the equation of the line. So the algebra is pretty simple from here. So you'll have y minus 4 is equal to 2 times x minus 4. Okay, so that's y minus 4 equals 2x minus 8. When you do distributive property, now you can add 4 to both sides. And then that'll give you what our answer is and then what we'll graph. So it looks like that's going to give y equals 2x minus 4 is your answer to your problem. So again, what you're doing is same slope. The line I gave you had a slope of 2, so does the parallel line. And then you go through that point. Okay, is that good? Okay, everybody? Okay, are you taking notes on the laptop? Or?
I'm right now looking. What section are we on?
Okay, we're on F3. Okay, all right. Okay, now go ahead and plot this. All right, so plot this line. So if you have y equals 2x minus 4, then what you want to do is go down 4 because you have a y-intercept of 4. You have a slope of 2. So from here you would go up 2 over 1, over and over again. And see what will happen on this is you're going to see that you're going to make it through that point 4, 4. So visually you can tell that you've done that problem right. Okay, that's it. That's what you need to do in that problem. Okay. Now, what you want to do on this then too is these problems are 100% checkable. You can see you're right by doing the graph, but what you can do is just take the point 4, 4 and plug it in. So the way you check the answer and verify it is just plug in that point into your answer and see if it works. So if you did that, you would have 4 equals 2 times 4 minus 4. So that's is going to work out. Okay, so you can tell you're right by doing that. You always can. Okay, and you should learn to do that. Okay, does everybody understand what I just did there? Okay, all right. Any problem? Okay. All right, I'm going to do one more of these, and then we'll kind of do the thing with perpendicular and go through that a little bit. So what we're doing on this is the same problem. It's got a different equation, and then this time I give you an x-intercept. So what you're doing is you're going to find an equation parallel to this line that goes through this x-intercept. Okay. So to begin with, the first thing you want to do is we're going to go ahead and graph this equation, and we need to find its slope. So how do you find the slope of that line if I give you an equation? What do you need to do? Solve for y, right. Okay, so you want to solve for y, so you can move this over, move the x over. So you'd have 2y equals negative 3x minus 2. Then you can divide by 2. So we'd end up having y equals negative 3 halves x minus 1 like that. Okay, so what's the slope? Negative 3 halves. Okay, all right. So we have that, all right, and then the parallel line is going to have the same slope, okay? All right, so let's go ahead and let's graph this line. So, just go ahead and construct a graph of that line. You don't need a calculator. You can do the y-intercept's -1. If you have a slope of -3/2, what do? You go down 3, right 2. Okay, count out, rise over run. So you go 1, 2, 3 down, and then right 2 like that. And then that would be what your original line looks like, is like that. And we're just graphing so you can visually see what's going on the problem. Okay? All right, the other thing is you're given a x-intercept -3. So I'm going to have you just put a dot on -3, 0, and then the idea is your line's going to be parallel to that original line. It's going to go through that x-intercept. Okay, everybody with me okay? Okay, all right. So again, the easiest way to do this is just use the point slope formula like we did on the last problem. And what slope do you plug in since they're parallel? Same slope, right? Okay, they have the same slope. Okay, so the -3/2 will go in here. You plug the point in. See, the point you had was -3, 0. So the -3 goes there. Y = 0 goes there. Okay, and then you just solve that equation for y. Then we'll graph it to visually see if it looks right to us. So we'll have y - 0 equals -3/2 times x, and then you have minus 3. The formula has a subtraction symbol, so you have the minus. Minus becomes plus, so you should resolve that. So this would be y, which is kind of nice. Then you have -3/2 x plus 3, and on this one you can just distribute the -3/2 through there, and then you've got an answer to the problem. So if I do that, I have y equals -3/2 x. When you do the arithmetic, you're doing -3/2 times 3/1. Remember, you multiply fractions straight across, so that is -9/2. All right, so that's what that is, and that -9/2 is like -4.5 if you look at a decimal on that. So your final answer would be this thing right here. Okay? All right, is everybody with me in what I'm doing there? Okay, if I want you to find an equation of a line, your thought process is generally use the point slope formula and make sure you have a point and you have a slope, okay? And then you can get at everything okay. Now when you graph this, I'm just going to kind of estimate this. It has a y-intercept of -4.5. It has a slope of -3/2. So if I went down 3/2, it would look like that. And visually, if you went through and really counted out that slope and everything, it would go through that x-intercept. That's the idea, okay? All right, and checking, what did I say you do to check? You just plug the point in and see if it works out. So I'm going to do that. So the point is -3, 0. So if you plug in 0 in for y and -3 in for x, you would have 0 equals -3/2. I may have a mistake here and not caught it. Let me see here. Looks like I got an error somewhere here. Oh, hold on. Why am I plugging into that? That's not the answer to the problem. Okay. Sometimes I do stuff like that and I'm not paying attention. Okay, my apologies. Let's do it over here. You don't have to write down the checking, but I just remind you can do that. So the answer is -3/2 x minus 9/2. Okay, the point is -3, 0. So I think pretty sure that will check. And what you'd end up having is 0 equals -3/2 times -3/1 minus 9/2. So notice this is 9/2 minus 9/2, so that's 0. Okay, so it works. So I'm certain that I'm right on the problem. Okay, all right. Any questions about what I did there? Okay, so I just got one more thing I want to show you on here, and these are just kind of geometry connections that are kind of good for students to make. So when lines are perpendicular, that means they just cross at a right angle, so that would be an example of two perpendicular lines. So I want to just kind of see what you all know from your background on this. You probably all learned this before. We'll see if you remember this or not. These are the two lines that I have a graph of. So the question is, if you look at their slopes, how would that tell you that they're perpendicular? Do you remember that from your background? What are they?
If the product is -1.
That's one way to look at it. And what he's saying is this slope's 3, that's -1/3. If you multiply that out, you get -1. That's correct. The other way is they're just what we call a negative reciprocal. So if you have 3/1 and you turn it upside down, but make the slope opposite, that's what we have. So yeah, if you multiply the slopes together, you'll get -1, but they're what you call negative reciprocals, okay? Does that make sense? Is that something you're familiar with from at some point in time? If not, that's okay. It's an easy thing to learn, okay? So on this next page, there's a couple of things we want to kind of get straightened out here. So two lines are perpendicular if the lines are negative reciprocals. So you want to know what I mean by that. Okay, and like this, so if one slope was 2/5, what would the perpendicular line slope be? Turn it upside down and make it negative, so you would have -5/2. Don't forget the negative. They have to have opposite slopes because one line has to go up and one line has to go down. Otherwise, you're not going to make them perpendicular. And like you said, if you multiply the two perpendicular line slopes, you get -1. So on this illustration, if you take -5/2 times 2/5, you get -10/10, so you get -1. Okay, so just make sure that that product is -1 when you do that. When we do these problems, it's pretty much identical to what I just did, except if I'm asking for a perpendicular line, you have to use that negative reciprocal slope. Okay? Okay, so let's kind of finish up with a couple of these things, and then we'll move on from here. So this one is, I'm giving you this equation. I think I did that on a previous example, that line. Then we're going to make a line that's perpendicular to this line y equals x that passes through that point 3,2. Okay? So what I want you to do is go ahead and just graph y equals 2x. Okay, that's got a y-intercept of 0. It's got a slope of 2/1. Okay, so we just put a y-intercept there. And from that point, go up 2/1, and then you got your original line like that. Okay, and then visually, we'll be able to hopefully tell we're right when we crunch this thing out then. Okay, the other thing is we have a point 3,2, so you want to locate that point 3,2 and go like that. So what we're going to end up doing is our line's going to be at a right angle to it now, so it's not going to be parallel. So what we do is actually the same thing that I did on the last problem with one exception. So what you do is the slope intercept or the point slope formula, okay, like this. All right. Now, if the slope of the line's 2, what is the slope of the perpendicular line going to be then? -1/2, right. Don't forget to put the negative in there. I see students do that a lot. So yeah, the slope of the perpendicular is -1/2. You got your point 3,2, so the x value is 3, that goes in there. The y value is 2, that goes in like that then, okay? So it's the same principle. And when you take Calc 1, by the way, you use this formula all the time because you end up finding equations of tangent lines a lot in a calculus class. So you'll certainly want to get familiar with how to use this formula. Okay, so there's two ways to do this. You can, distribute if you want to. I generally do it this way. I just find it easier. So what I like to do is if I have a fractional slope, I like to just get rid of my fraction. You don't have to do it that way if you don't want to. I mean, you just got to get the right answer. So what I'm going to do is multiply that side by 2 and that side by 2. And it just gets rid of the fraction, so I don't have to worry about the fraction arithmetic anymore. So if I do that, this side would be 2y minus 4. See, this side, the 2's would cross out, so we don't worry about fractions anymore. Then you would distribute the -1 through to get -1x and then plus 3 like that. Does that make sense? Okay, just whatever that denominator is, just get rid of it, okay? And that way you don't have to deal with any fractions or anything. Now it's pretty standard. You add 4 to both sides. Okay, so that gives 2y equals -1x plus 7. Then if we divide everything by 2, you'll end up getting the answer we're looking for, which is y equals -1/2x plus 7 over 2. So that's your final answer. That would be the line that's perpendicular, and it would go through that point 3 over 2. Okay, so the only difference in this is you use that negative reciprocal slope. Okay, and let's go ahead and graph this and just see if it looks right to us. That 7 over 2 is 3.5. So you would have a y-intercept of 3.5. So I'll just kind of estimate that. And see, now if you went down 1 over 2, you would be here. Make sure I got that okay. Down 1 over 2 like that. And then down 1 over 2 again would kind of be in there. So it looks to me like it goes through that point. And it looks pretty perpendicular. Okay, that's the idea. Now, if I wanted to check my point, what would I do? I mean, without graphing, what would I do? Plug the point in. So yeah, you could plug the, I'm not going to do this, but if you plug in the 3, 2 into your answer, it'll work. And then then you're right. And then you've got the right slope of negative 1/2 there. Okay? All right? So I'm going to let you guys do this problem yourself and just make sure that you can do this. I'll kind of walk around, see if you need any help or anything. But what you want to do is just kind of do what I did on the last problem. First step is you want to solve this for y, and find the slope, and then graph that original line, and then do the point slope formula to finish that up then. Okay? Does anybody have a question about anything? Okay? So go ahead and let's see if we can all get this okay. And if you get an answer, try to check the problem and everything. Generally on your first exam, this is an important thing. So generally I would do something like either or, like a perpendicular or a parallel problem. Okay, either one. But you need to know the point slope formula. That's not something that I give you. I expect a student to know that because you use it so much. Yeah.
Is that second equation sign just a typo?
Is it what?
The second equation sign, is it just a typo in front of the 8?
Which one are you talking about?
Or number 14.
On number 14, a typo?
The second equation is 2.
Second equation?
It's the first equation, second equals sign.
Yeah, equals 2, my bad.
I'm sorry, I'm like not following what you're saying. Okay. That's an equation that looks good to me. Second equation.
Equal sign.
Oh, I got you now. See, I can't see. Yes, okay. That's a new kind of equation. An equal. Okay. Right. So yeah, that's just that equal to 8 like that. Sorry about that. Just kind of see how you're doing with this. The first step that you got to do is solve for y. So you would have negative 4y equals negative 5x plus 8. Then divide everything by negative 4. So you end up getting y equals, that's positive 5/4 x, and then minus 2. Okay, so that's step 1. And the purpose of that is just to find the slope of that original line. Okay, so you got to do that. And then what I would want you to do is graph this. So you'd have a y-intercept of negative 2. You would go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 up, and over 1, 2, 3, 4, like that. So that's your original line that I gave you. That's the y equals 5/4 x minus 2. Okay, so we got that. All right, step 2. What you want to do is you want to use your point slope formula. And this goes like this. Okay, what slope do you plug in if it's perpendicular? Negative 4/5, right? Okay, and that's what you had. You had that right. So that's negative 4/5 goes there. The point that I gave you was what? Negative 4/3. So you'd have a negative 4 there, and then you'd have a 3 there. Okay? And then it's just, once you get this set up, you work out the algebra. So that's y minus 3 equals negative 4/5. And then x subtract negative 4, like that. Okay, and then you're going to solve that for y. So if you do that, you would have y minus 3 equals negative 4/5 x plus 4. Okay, and then the way I show this, you don't have to do this, but I'd get rid of the 5. So just multiply by 5. That way you don't have to worry about fractions. You're less likely to make mistakes to me if you do it that way. Just get rid of that then. Okay, and by doing that, you're going to have 5y minus 15. Okay, and then on this side, the 5's cross out. Then you distribute the negative 4, so you'd have negative 4x, and then minus 16. And then you're going to solve that for y, and then you'll have what the correct answer is. Okay. So from here, I just go through, I can add 15 to both sides. You can kind of rearrange the terms in your head if you want to. So that gives 5y equals negative 4x minus 1, like that. And then we divide by 5. And then there's your answer. And I think that's what you said, wasn't it? Y equals negative 4/5 x. You said 0.2, but that you can have either the 1/5 or you can have the 0.2. Either way, that's it. Okay? That's it. Okay? Now, really, as far as graphing this, I mean, if you graph this thing, hang on just a second, I'll get your question. So you just estimate this. You're down a fifth. Well, if you went 1, 2, 3, 4 down and over 5, roughly you would kind of be over here, like that. So your line would be kind of doing something like that. It doesn't have to be perfectly accurate. But the point is you end up going through the point, negative 4, 3, and then you can visually tell it's perpendicular. And then again, you just plug the point into your answer to verify 100% that it's right. That's the idea. Okay, did you have a question?
I did, yeah. So when you're setting up your point slope formula, where did you get the minus 3 that goes onto the y from?
Okay, that came from the point that I gave you. So you're making the line go through the point negative 4, 3.
But isn't the y there too?
What do you mean by that?
The y is 3.
Yeah, so what I do is I give you a point.
Okay, so yeah, then you take the point that you know of an
Well, if you're checking, now, like this one, you have to use negative 4, 3. Because the purpose of the problem is you're making your line go through that point. Okay, you're going through that point, so that's why I'm plugging in the negative 4, 3 into the point slope formula.
Gotcha.
Okay, you can't just pick a point because that's part of the problem.
Yeah.
Is I have to give you a specific point. Okay.
I got it. Thank you.
Okay, very good. Any questions? Yeah.
I did it a little kind of different.
Okay.
So like instead of like multiplying each by 5, I actually multiplied by the opposite reciprocal.
Okay, and you still had a fraction by doing that.
Yeah.
Okay, so I wouldn't recommend doing it that way because all I'm trying to do is get rid of that 5. Okay, if you multiply by the reciprocal 5/4, then you're right, then the left side, but you'd still have fractions everywhere. That's why. So just pay attention to the denominator, and then that makes it a lot easier if you do the problem that way. Then you don't have to deal with any fractional arithmetic.
Okay. I still got the same answer though, but I just...
Yeah, it's harder. It's okay to do that. It's just more work. My theory is the least amount of work is what I like to do. Okay, anything that I can keep simple, that's what I want to do. Okay, any questions about anything? I'm going to go ahead and close this off if we're all good, and then the next 2 sections we're going to do today are super short, and just kind of your homework on the next 2 isn't going to be very long.